This is a sermon from St. Paul's Church, Brookfield, Connecticut, transforming lives through Jesus. For more information, go to www.stpaulsbrookfield.com.
Well, good morning. And welcome to this, our first ever Blessing of the Animal service, incorporated here into a Eucharistic liturgy. So you're part of a brand new experiment here at St. Paul's Church. We're so glad you're here this morning. Though, of course, what's apparently not new at St. Paul's Church is that the front rows still don't get filled, even if we're outside. So I see all y'all in the back. I saw you come in and filter in the chair. That's okay. We're glad you're here, too. But anybody who wants to be brave enough to come sit in the front rows, I promise you Molly does not bite. But as we're celebrating this Feast of St. Francis, I want to help frame that event by starting with an imaginative exercise. I want you to pause for a moment and imagine something with me. I want you to imagine that God comes to you one day and says, I need you and your family to gather all the animals living in the tri-state area. And I need for you to build them an ark to make sure they stay alive, because the world around them is about to crumble and dissolve. The places these animals have called home are about to disappear, and I need you to make a home for them. I need you to be the one who feeds them and protects them. What would you say? Well, the question is not as far-fetched as it appears on first blush. And I don't just mean because of all the natural disasters we've seen throughout our country over the last few years. After all, the homes for the animals are in peril, are disappearing, aren't they? Did you know that in the next 50 years, up to one-third of the world's plant and animal population may be lost forever? Conservation biologists regard this as the first mass extinction since the time of the dinosaurs. In the United States alone, 30% of the nation's plant and animal species are at risk of disappearing, and over 500 species are either lost or may be lost forever. Now ask yourself this. Would you know they were gone if they did go extinct? To put it differently, if God asked you to gather all the animals living in the tri-state area, would you know what they were? Would you know where to find them? Would you know what they like to eat? Would you have the stamina and the patience to stay with them, serving them and taking care of them in their illness and their need? Now, I say all this morning because we read at least the beginning of the story of Noah and his ark, which raises a question, right? How should we picture it? How should we picture Noah's ark? Yeah, I grew up thinking that Noah's ark was kind of like an escape vessel, right? God's way of saving a remnant of all the people and the animals so that when the flood was over, there would be representatives of all species in order to repopulate the earth. The ark was important in this way of thinking because it rescued humanity and all of creation from the flood. And that may not be wrong. But I've been thinking more deeply about that idea lately. There's an ancient tradition of commentary on the story, in fact, that reflects that the ark was even more important for another reason. According to this tradition, the ark was so important because it was where Noah and his family learned to practice. The ark was the place where Noah and his family learned to practice the same kind of love and care that God shows for all of God's creatures and all of creation all the time. The ark, in other words, was not an escape vessel. It was a school. It was a school for learning of the compassion and genuine hospitality that is in the heart of God. Remember, after all, why Genesis 6 says the flood was deemed necessary in the first place. Humanity, it has been said, as Isa read so beautifully this morning, humanity had become corrupt in all its ways. A corruption primarily evidenced by the fact that the whole world was filled with violence. That sound familiar to anybody? Yeah. Violence against others. Violence against creation. A betrayal of the vocation God had given us when God made us. In light of this, the ark became a place where humanity could learn new ways. Different ways where we could learn again to be as we were in the garden, the caretakers of the earth. Thus, according to this interpretive tradition, the most important thing about the ark is not that it rescued humanity from the flood. The most important thing about the ark was that it rescued humanity and all of creation from itself. Now, I wonder if Noah and all his kids relished the work they were given on the ark. Did they like dealing with the animals that smelled a bit? Or maybe bit or kicked them? Did they like serving critters who never once said thank you? Did they complain because the work seemed never ending and there were no vacations in sight? Did they delight when baby monkeys or zebras or puppies were born? You know, one of the other really interesting interpretations given that same ancient tradition I just referenced is that Noah did not stop to sleep. It says that Noah didn't stop to sleep the many months that he was on the ark because he took such joy in taking care of the animals. Now, this thought's a little stranger than the one I referenced before, but the idea behind it is really beautiful. It imagines Noah like the host of a great party. Everyone was having such a good time that Noah did not want it to end. Noah didn't want to go to sleep because he saw how his service of the animals brought them such gladness and life, and then it asks, isn't that what God is like? Isn't that what God is like with us all the time? Like the host of a great party, constantly taking so much joy in all of us that he neither slumbers nor sleeps. Psalm 65 and Job 39 and Genesis 2 all seem to think that that is exactly what God is like with us all the time. He who watches over Israel, it says, neither slumbers nor sleeps. So here's the rub, right? Most of us will never actually get that call from God saying, I need you and your family to gather all the animals in the tri-state area together and put them on an ark, right? Most of us, in fact, will never be directly involved with any large-scale conservation efforts or even be called to work on a farm, though the creation narratives might press us to consider whether more of us should be working directly with our hands in the dirt. But many of us here today, especially those of us who have come with our animals in tow, many of us here today have been called to join God on his ark because we've been called to care for at least one of God's furried or feathered creatures. And that is a holy thing. That is a holy thing indeed. And it is a holy thing because it will make you holy. Learning to care for one of God's blessed animals is finally a blessing unto us. For to do that, to return to the heart of God for creation, to be reminded of how we care with and for each other, is to turn back from the corruption that's in our hearts and turn away from the ways of violence. To care for one of these dear creatures is, at the end, to bring us back to God's heart for us. And for that, we say, thanks be to God, and amen.
Amen.